So the outcomes, the consequences of alert fatigue in all of its different forms can, of course, be ignored alerts, can be slowed response time, not reacting with the urgency that something is due. And it can also result in burnout. And like I said, joining the healthcare field, I get to hear more now about provider burnout. There have been news stories about alert fatigue resulting in things being missed and ignored that actually result in patient deaths. So again, let's make a correlation to the technology field. What have you seen in your experience? What have been the most sort of dire consequences and costly mistakes that you've seen as a result of alert fatigue and lack of automation?
So I think one of the best examples is, and the one that I think is easiest for people to orient on when they think about IT, and especially the intersection of IT and security, are the number of vulnerabilities. And so this is the slide that you and I showed the audience when we met last year about. This was the projection for the number of CVEs, the number of security vulnerabilities in software was growing, and it was growing at an alarming rate and becoming a lot to process. And so, we talked about this and we said, hey, by the time we get to 2025, it's going to be up to 32,000 a year, and it's going to be really bad, because we had 28,000 in 2023. But then 2024, 40,000, right? Like totally blew out the curve. Now, this is not even, and now there's some nuance here, right? This is not necessarily a bad thing in terms of cybersecurity, because part of this is vendors have gotten better, as well as security researchers. They've gotten better at finding these vulnerabilities. Vendors have become more disciplined in reporting these vulnerabilities, right? And so there is some healthiness to those numbers being high, but it still doesn't change the base condition of there are just so many that, I mean, I've still, even now, I spoke to a company late last year, and their security team was trying to manually read through every CVE that was released by every vendor and match it up with their environment to see if they had it somewhere in their tech stack, and then make a manual determination about how they were going to proceed, if they were going to patch it, and then, how quickly they were going to patch it, where they were going to patch it. And it was mind-boggling. I was like, how do you keep up? And
well, yeah,
the gentleman I spoke to just kind of chuckled. He said, well, we keep up poorly. Poorly is the answer.
Right, because how can you, because first of all, that's so labor intensive, the cost involved, but how can you stay, catch up in time, right? There's going to be a delayed response because there's just too much volume.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And you can see that in and then another great example is the National Vulnerability Database, where, they cannot even keep up. They are the ones charged with maintaining the global authoritative database, and they've had trouble keeping up. And this was, as of last summer. They don't have newer numbers out, but their last announcement in November was, hey, we've added a lot of external contractor support, paid a lot of money to bring on this extra capacity. We are now keeping up with all the new ones. We're still behind in the backlog, and we don't have an effective way to burn that down. So these problems they're not getting better. They're in fact getting worse on the demand side. So we have to fix the supplies, or maybe it's backwards, maybe it's the supply side, right? But the amount that needs to be dealt with is just going to go up and up and up, and the ability to keep up with it manually is going to be overwhelming. So you have to fix it through better automation and thinking through these processes more holistically.
Well, you brought up exactly what I wanted to talk about next. Again, always kind of coming at these things from the human impact perspective. A really common solution, and you just described it, is to throw more people at the problem, right? Hire more contractors. Yeah. Let's just keep throwing more people. And indeed, things like rotating responsibilities between team members, that can help to reduce the impact of alert fatigue for a while, but it's just not a sustainable long-term solution. So, and then there's also the other industry trend that's making that harder and harder to do, and that's the shortage of technology resources. So we talked about this last summer. what's happened since then? Is the problem of technology resources, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it remaining the same? Where are we at?